So what is this process? And I know Mary talked about this a little bit last time, but I thought I would kind of take you through it um, from the eyes of the institution. So one thing that I wanted to show you, this is the link to IDA. Can you all see where it says the IDA website? Okay, good. I wanted to be sure it went. So it talks a little bit about what accreditation is and how structured literacy impacts that. It talks about the pipeline, and she talked about that. There's pipeline and fast track, um, and then the who, and then the who benefits. So there's all of this great information on the IDA website to tell you about the process. We did not go through fast track, even though we had been certified prior, because the process was so changed. And I was doing this on my own now. I wanted to go through and hear these coaching sessions and the facilitator presentations and webinars. And I'm really glad that I did, because it really helped make sure that I had everything that they wanted us to have in place. So we didn't have to do a lot of resubmissions or them emailing us saying, we need more evidence of this. We really didn't have that. We just had one area that they asked us about. So the website is very knowledgeable. I definitely recommend checking that out. And then we had to be sure that all of our players were on board. And so our university had to be on board. We already knew we had the legislature, Department of Ed was on board. Our faculty was on board because we were already getting them trained prior to doing this the first time. And we knew that we had students and candidates that were interested. So the key for us this last time at the renewal or the reaccreditation was to show that it was still worth the money. And we showed that in spades, and I'll show that to you here in just a few minutes. Since then, we've made sure that all of our faculty and our adjuncts have been trained in the science of reading and at least one program that's a dyslexia program. Everyone now for the state has to go through high quality instructional materials training, and all of our practicum supervisors have passed the KPIRI, and they have a reading specialist license, whether it's in Arkansas or other adjuncts. They're both in Texas. So they are licensed through Texas as a reading specialist. And there's two different types of accreditation. There's accreditation and accreditation plus. And accreditation plus is the gold standard. But if you don't have anything, start with accreditation. And the accreditation is the piece where it's just it's the information without the practicum. To get the accreditation plus, you need that practicum. So this is a list of the different parts of the application. There's 5 areas to the application. And then we have reviewer rubrics that we go through, and you get to look at all of this up front. So it's all on the website, the rubrics and everything. Nothing is hidden. So part 1 is where you talk about why are you seeking accreditation. You have to tell about your program resources. So what, I mean, it's like, if you're operating in a building, do you have office space? Do you have faculty? What kind of technology do they have access to? Just anything that you can think of about resources. You had to tell about program adaptations, accommodations for students that need it, and how you dealt with that, how you give feedback in the program, and then how you make your candidates aware of policies, procedures, and dispositions. This is definitely the easiest part of the application. And as a university program, you should have a lot of these already in place, which is the nice thing. We had to write the reason, of course, but your resources, it's pretty easy to say, this is what we have. And adaptations and accommodations, a lot of that is dictated by university policy. And then we have some department policy. So we didn't have to add anything to that. And we already had policies and procedures in place. The only thing that we did was we actually put it in a handbook. We had not done that yet. So that was the only additional item we had to do here. We talked about how we gave students feedback. We use Blackboard, we use VideoAnt, and we use Zoom. So all of those avenues that we talk about for feedback. And then our department already had something in place for dispositions for undergraduates. So we just adopted that with a few little tweaks for our graduates and incorporated that, the IDA Standard 5, which is the one on ethics. So this is definitely the easiest part of the application that does not take very long to get knocked out. The bulk of the application is here in part 2. And in part 2, you have to have a list of your classes. And if you have multiple programs, you can have shared classes. So we sent forth our master's degree and our graduate certificate as being accredited, both of them. And our graduate certificate is part of the master's degree. So it really was copying and pasting. There really wasn't much to change to that application. And our undergraduate program initially was accredited the first round, but we'll talk in a few minutes about benefits of this and why we decided just to go with the graduate program. You do need to submit full syllabi for each class, which as a university, that's something that you've already done. Something that may be new is the knowledge and practice standards coverage. So we created a chart, and now Mary Winniston has created all of these for you, which makes it even easier. But you list the knowledge and practice standard and what course it's in, what readings, accountable readings do they have to do that match each standard. And then how do you assess the standards? And we had that. It was just a matter of pulling it together in one place. And then when we went and we looked at the knowledge and practice standards, then we could see there are some places that perhaps a standard was being overcovered. Maybe we don't need to teach it 5 times because something else wasn't being addressed or they only saw it 1 time. And so we really thought that it needed to come up again to be sure that we were covering it well. So we had to, again, we had to have a lot of this done standard-wise for our state already. The difference is that, if your state hasn't adopted knowledge and practice or used knowledge and practice standards as part of their state standards, you're going to have to go in and create those charts again. But as a reviewer, I can tell you this is the place where people miss things the most. And it's really not challenging. It's standard. How do you teach it? What do they have to read? How do you assess it? Just don't leave those things out. But the rubric has been expanded a little bit when you get to standard 4, that you're having to show that you're doing it at the knowledge and the application level, which makes it, took a little more work. So looking at the knowledge and practice standards, there's 5 standards that you look at. The first one is Foundation of Literacy Acquisition. That one's usually covered very well. The second is knowledge of diverse reading profiles, including dyslexia. The third is assessment. As a reviewer, I can tell you this is an area that we sometimes see weakness. Number four, structured literacy instruction is where we see the most weaknesses. I don't know. Sometimes I think maybe they just get missed. You miss a standard. I don't know. Um, we've written a couple of things before asking Mary, do they just think they don't have to teach these 5 standards listed here? So you just really have to go through those standards and make sure that they're all covered. And then the ethics piece, and that surprisingly is one that's easy to get left out because, we're so busy teaching content, you don't necessarily think about that. When you get to part 3, this is if you want the accreditation plus, and this is the practicum piece. And it's a pretty bulky piece. So this is where you have to put descriptions about what your practicum looks like. You've got to talk about your practicum instructors and their qualifications. You've got to talk about your practicum requirements and then how your practicum is executed. And you do have to submit sample videos and sample case studies. But it is also laid out in the directions. It says, this is what you should have in a case study. This is what we should see in a video. And when we did this, initially they aligned with Siri, but just at the interventionist level. When we went through reaccreditation the last time, I just said, hey, if we're doing it at the interventionist, we might as well go ahead and do it at the specialist and just get it all in there. So we've since gone in and made those changes. And so I thought I'd share with you a little bit about our practicum so that you could see what it is that they look like. So there's required practicums. There's 2 required practicums in our program. We have practicum 1 and practicum 2. Practicum 1 is geared for students in K3. They should be students that have difficulties at the phonological awareness level or early phonics. The students will do 25 hours of intervention, and they have to have additional time for pre-testing, post-testing, and progress monitoring. And all of this is what makes up the portfolio and becomes the case study. Preferably, your students will work with a student one-on-one. They don't have to be diagnosed as dyslexic. They should just have at least characteristics. We have to do formal observations. And then, like I said, all of this comes together to make the portfolio, and they write the case study based off of all of it. Practicum 2 is exactly the same, except they're working with an adolescent. So they're looking at grades 4 through 12. And these students, while you could still be working with them on some early skills, they should primarily be at the multi-syllabic level, and the emphasis be in comprehension and vocabulary and writing, so that you truly get that experience from both ends of the spectrum to show that you can work all the way across the aspects of literacy. Then we have optional practicums. And so these are not written into our program as a requirement, but these are the practicums that you have to take in order to get certified at the specialist level. So if you go through our graduate program, you're going to get the interventionist level. If you want to do the specialist level, you take, and it's 2 additional semesters of practicum. The way that it's written is Siri just wants you to work another semester with that same student. So they don't have the pre-assessment in this piece because they're rolling right into it. So we just let them keep going and continue progress monitoring and then post-assess at the end for their case study. And they're just adding to their portfolio and continuing to have those observations. But it's much less work for the student because they're used to this by now. They're cranking out these plans. They know how this portfolio works. They know how to submit everything. We do have our students apply extra for practicum 3 and 4. We all know that we have students that come through your program that they're fine, they're going to complete the program, and we're okay with them being an interventionist. But being a specialist, you really should be top in your field. So we have very stringent rules in place. You have to have a certain GPA. You cannot have a history of turning things in late. There cannot be any ethical or dispositional concerns. Just several things like that that we lay out that you then apply. And most of it, they weed themselves out from applying because they know when you have to sign that box at the bottom that says, I meet all of these requirements if you don't. So, so far we haven't had any issues there. And we're able to do this with our university because it is extra. It's not part of our licensure program. It's not part of the degree requirements. This is something extra that we provide so that students are able to get these certifications. They have 3 formal observations, and that's what IDA requires. Ideally, you want 45 minutes, but working in schools, sometimes all they have is 30 minutes. Honestly, I've had students before that all they have is 15 minutes. And if that's what the school gives them, that's what we have, what we work with. We follow the IDA rubric, so it's very easy for grading. They have it all created and laid out. We observe our students either live via Zoom or Google Meet, or they can video themselves and upload it to VideoAnt, and then we give feedback. They have to submit lesson plans and reflections, and we have templates that we have since created for everything. Templates for plans, templates for supervisors, a list of questions to pull from to ask, a place to take notes so that we have everything documented, so that there's never a question between observations what you should be seeing or what you should be seeing improvement in. We have added extra that they have 3 15-minute segments that they upload for peer discussion. We put them in PLCs. And they love this piece. We have gotten the best feedback about this because they get to see, we put them in a group and they're getting to see people from other states, other countries, implement other programs or things they've created. They get ideas from each other. And then they have to give each other glows and grows. And we really go over it with them that it can't be, oh, this is so wonderful. You have to be very, very specific and intentional with your feedback. And they love the peer learning and the collegial relationships they develop. And it really helps them. They stay in touch with each other far after they're finished with us, still, touching base about kids. And there's other things that they do besides these peer videos. So our require portfolio, I'll just show you an example. We do it all in Google Drive just so the students can still have access to it after the fact. Blackboard, they don't have access to. So I'm going to pull one from Sherry's class. And so we have a student and they have 3 folders in here. And the first folder is where they put all of their pre-assessment information. And then there are separate questions that IDA wants asked as part of the case study. And it's background on the student, what program are you going to implement, what objectives are you going to use, what's your plan for progress monitoring. So all of that goes in folder 1. Folder 2 is where they house their lesson plans, artifacts from their lessons. When we observe them, we upload their observation rubrics here. They keep all of their progress monitoring here, and they keep up with their intervention hour log. And then the third folder is where they have all of their post-assessment data. They're not there yet. This is this semester's. And then they write their final case study. So that's what the portfolio looks like. And then we have IDA wants you to have post conferences after each of those formal observations. And so if it's live, we do it immediately after. If it's video ant, we schedule a time. And during this time, we go over that IDA rubric with the program, with the practicum candidate. We talk about their strengths, their areas that need improvement. We talk about the lesson plan, if there are things that were missing, what they need, objectives, if they were met, and then we develop a plan. How do they need to improve? What is their stretch to grow in a particular area? What skills were missing? And this plan is where we pick up from in the second observation to make sure that they have followed this. And IDA just has you record these post conferences, and we just upload a copy in their folder so that we always have our artifacts available to us. All right. And then everyone goes back to having part 4. This is the faculty credentials. And this is where anyone that teaches in your program, adjunct or full-time, you will upload a resume or a vita. They also fill out a statement of professional experience. And this is really important because sometimes in the resume, you know, they may have earned their degree 20, 30 years ago. So we need somewhere that shows that they have stayed current and they're in science of reading, in structured literacy. And then there's a page that they have to fill out about what their credentials are. And there's certain areas, you have to meet at least 2 of the areas. So if you don't have a certified reading specialist, if they have experience in coaching, then that can count. And then part 5 is the impact matrix. And so this is like, I think about when we talk about CAPE in higher ed, is your key assessments. So what are you using to measure? And then what will you do with it? And no one ever, hardly anyone answers, what will you do with it? We're always marking that question. It's just funny that we leave that out. But, and I tell everyone that's going through this, just do the K-Piri. That's the test. If you do the K-Piri, that's the only metric you have to have. If you don't do the K-Piri, you have to have key assessments, and those key assessments are scored against a rubric. And it's very involved. It's more things that you have to create when you could just use this that's already been created and vetted and all the reliability and validity done on it. So that's what we do. We do the K-Piri. So the thing that I love to share the most about this is what's the impact? So what do we get out of this? The number one thing that your university people are going to want to know is about money, and it's increased enrollment. And I love sharing this. I love talking about this because in 2015, we only had 22 students in our program. As of now, we have 137. It went from 22 to 137. Undergraduate programs are declining everywhere. Graduate programs are declining everywhere. This big enrollment cliff is coming. If you're at a university and they haven't talked about it, I don't know how you've escaped it. We hear about it all the time. But the literacy program is the only one in our College of Education graduate programs that has grown, and not only grown, but we've doubled even in the last year. So that's your biggest thing, is it's going to make money for your university. And it's limited marketing. So the other thing is, and I don't know if it's this way everywhere, But where we are, all of the marketing dollars go to undergrad programs. If they go to the graduate programs, it's like overall you come to graduate school, but not necessarily marketing for individual programs. And so up until 2024, we had $0 dedicated to this program to market with, and we grew it from 22 to 137. It was all word of mouth and all IDA. Since then, our graduate school lets us write a grant and we get $2,500 for marketing now. And I've done summer webinars, I've done a conference booth, I've done some website advertising. None of those things bring me the numbers like IDA does. When it was time for renewal and I had to justify this money that it costs for accreditation, I went in and showed numbers and said, our program could tank without this because this is where we were before being accredited by IDA. It says a lot. IDA does all of the marketing for you. And I say that by, it's so simplistic. There's a list. Students are going around and they're looking for somewhere that they want to go to get their degree in. And most of them start looking where they are. And if where they are, they're researching is not structured literacy, it's still back in balanced literacy or whole language, they go to the IDA website and they click on accredited higher ed programs. And this is it. That is not a long list. If you're on this list, you will have students. You will have more students than you know what to do with. I need faculty more than I need another student body right now, which is a wonderful problem to have. But this right here is all you need because the students will come, they will look for that. And then they start talking to each other. The Science of Reading Facebook group on what I didn't learn in college, if they don't get it here, they're going to get it there. And there is where they talk to each other about programs and which ones do what they're supposed to do and which ones don't and which ones are IDA accredited. So that's a whole lot of it. It also gives us a chance to have some diverse populations, which is very nice. We are now in, because so many states don't have an accredited program, we have almost 40 states represented. I just added Wyoming in our program, either as a current student or an alumni. And we are in, I think, 5 countries now. I even had Stephanie Staller reached out to me, and she's at Mount St. Joseph, and they're accredited, but they don't take international students. Well, we'll take international students. And so they needed somewhere to go, and they were looking for an IDA place to go. So that has, we're learning a lot about different countries around us and what all's going on and who has laws that you have to do balanced literacy. It's just amazing. It brings increased faculty knowledge because we have to stay on top of our game if we're going to stay accredited. And it really gives us a competitive advantage. When I meet with students, they'll say, what is your selling point? Well, I can tell you right now, my number one selling point is we are the only IDA accredited institution in the state of Arkansas. So if you're in Arkansas and you want the gold standard, this is where you come. And it works. And the last thing that I wanted to share, and I just, I kind of thought about this today. If you're a higher ed person, again, you know about CAPE, and that's the accrediting body. And before, the International Literacy Association was our SPA, or who we had to write to for our CAPE. Well, several years ago, they backed out, and they're no longer part of CAPE. So if you're a literacy program, you have the choice. If you write to ILA, you're going to pay to be accredited by ILA now. You're going to have to fill out an application. You're going to have to do all of this kind of documentation. It's going to have to be reviewed, and you're going to have to pay a fee, just like IDA. So our faculty has decided that with limited funds, we want to stick with IDA, because IDA is where we are current, where we are with evidence-based practices. It is the gold standard, and it's bringing them in, which is a beautiful thing. So that's a little bit about accreditation and about our steps that we've gone through. So I'm happy to answer questions if it's time.
So Amy, just a real quick question: can we get that overview and place it in on our drive, or is it restricted in some form or fashion?
No, I can share it with you.
Beautiful, thank you.
Amy, I do have a question. Good evening. Please
Hi.
forgive any distractions from me. I landed and here I am. Okay. If you could wave a magic wand, you mentioned faculty wanting more, good problem to have. If there were no barriers and you could just wave a magic wand, what would we need to do to get more faculty? I'm sure that's not just your institution, but probably the challenge for others. What do you think about that?
I really wish I had that magic wand. I have been fighting. So, like I said, I came into the program in 2017, and our numbers have just grown. And I ask every year for a position, and every year they say, "We're just going to give you all the support that you need. You can keep doing it." And I keep doing it because I love what I do, and I've worked too hard. Um, so I keep doing it, and I just got announced that I'm getting a position. So it only took me about 6 years, but I am finally getting a position. So I would say beg.
So
Hate to say, that's the wand.
that's the one. So had you had significant funding, like an endowment or something, that could have made all the difference in the world, it sounds like. Is that accurate?
Yes, because, and I'm glad you asked that, I have been trying to start a PhD line at our institution for a very long time, because there's only one in our state and it's going under. And I'm like, we are missing all of these dollars here. And I finally got approval 2 years ago to write it. And so it's written, and it's going before approval for our final set of approval in January. But they knew that once that happened, there has to be somebody else, because if you want me to teach these PhD classes, somebody has to teach my classes. And it helps when you start using adjuncts. The more adjuncts you use, they start, seeing that you've definitely documented the need. So all of those things have been what has helped. And just very conversations every single year badgering my dean. Mhm.
I guess my question, start to finish, time-wise, like what did it take, start to finish of the application process to?
I honestly, I probably worked on it over 4 or 5 months, because I kind of took my time with it. I think it could be done quicker, but if you could give yourself a good 4 to 6 months, you will not, if you don't have all of this stuff already in place, then you're going to have to worry about curriculum and taking changes through the curriculum process. Your life will be a lot better if you can have a bigger chunk of time.
Amy, were there any obstacles? You touched on a few. Were there any other obstacles, either, you know, politically or legislatively, that slowed you down?
Legislatively, no, because it helps when your legislators have kids with dyslexia, and they drive it. So that was thankfully never an issue. You're going to have some faculty that push back. I mean, I still have one that I just know what classes that I would assign them to teach, because I know their strengths, and you have to kind of manage it that way. And that's something that you definitely have to go into this thinking about your faculty and who's going to buck you. And then you just have to play to their strengths for the classes that you assign them. So they don't teach classes that are specifically in my dyslexia hours. I know they're very strong in comprehension and vocabulary and writing, and that is what they teach for me. And it has worked out really well. And it's been nice having a chair that listens. If you have a chair that knows nothing about literacy, that's even better, because then whatever you say, they just assume is what they're supposed to do.
Do you have a variety of texts that you use to teach your coursework?
We do, and I probably get pushback on this from the faculty more than anybody, because I can't select one. There is no one textbook out there. There's no two textbooks out there. I have a couple of classes that they have 4 textbooks. And nobody's yelled at me yet. None of the students have. The faculty look at me like I'm nuts some days. Someone had to take over one of my classes this semester, and he said, "Really?" I said, "Yes, you need a book for vocabulary, a book for comprehension, because nobody does it all well." So yeah, the Bible is going to be that Birch book, that multisensory language. And we use that across 5 classes, so they know to hang on to that book. And then other things, some of it I also am not afraid to change it.
That's great.
The bookstore doesn't necessarily probably like me, because they're always asking me, "What edition do you want? And what book are you using?" That's okay. We stay current.
I think my question is, because it looks like you dovetailed this program with your master's in special education. Is that right? That's the MSc? No?
It's not affiliated at all. With the affiliation is that we're in the same department.
Okay.
And we had SPED faculty that were also literacy that initially drove this back in 2014.
Okay.
But at this point, all of our faculty have literacy degrees. And we have 2 classes that we do have in the SPED program for our non-traditional students.
Because I'm thinking we'll have to pull it under our SPED program at U of H if that's what we end up doing.
I know of universities I've looked at, that's not uncommon at all.
I have another question for you, Amy. I'm assuming that there's high demand for your graduates among districts because of the huge equity issue. If I can't afford private therapy for my child, school, this is it. What would happen if we had scholarships available to accelerate the numbers that we could prepare, where the master's degree would be covered for the best and the brightest? What can you envision might happen? Again, back to funding.
Just think about what we would do to literacy and the numbers. And I will say ours are able to get teach grant funds. reading is not a shortage in our state, but since it is a shortage nationally, then you can get those funds. So I do have many students that come in, and that's how they're able to get funded. If I was able to get scholarships on top of that, I would have even more people. I mean, funding is what keeps them from coming.
So the other thing is we're thinking of keeping it under SPED because we're applying for OSEP master's grants because special education is a shortage area in Texas. I don't know about Arkansas, but in Texas, it is definitely a shortage area. So in terms of like funding dollars that way, we're hoping to also be able to spread our OSEP money to encourage people to apply for this program.
Yes, definitely.
And then we have an EDD and a PhD in literacy already, but I know that they're not IDA affiliated. So that would be nice to have that happen as well.
And it really would, because so far there are no EDD PhD programs that are IDA accredited yet. Mount St. Joseph has talked about pushing theirs through. They haven't yet. And I would like to, but I have to get it off the ground first. I have to show the demand.
Dr. Hope, we're very interested. That's exciting to hear you say.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, there's a lot of folks in our EDD program and special pops or professional leadership that are looking at dyslexia, that are doing studies around dyslexia, but we don't have that affiliation yet. So that's something that would, I think, bolster our numbers in terms of our applicants to the EDD.
It would be a huge draw. I have people contact me all the time about an EDD or PhD.
Well, and we're preparing leaders that are prepared to support teachers that are providing services to our students, which is really important for our schools.
You could be a leader there.
Hello, I'm Mark Joshi from Texas A&M University. I'm just curious, in your group, whether two things, whether you have looked at what these university professors know about NLP and the phonics and comprehension and that is one thing. And the other thing that we have worked on, the textbooks, whether they give the information about the whatever you want to say, the science of reading or evidence-based reading, NLP findings. Has anyone looked at it in Arkansas?
No, because we are I mean, it's written into our legislation. If you don't want to do it, the State Department says you have to. I mean, just honestly for our teachers, and we've done balanced literacy, we've done whole language. The literacy rates are not good. So no, I mean, I don't know of anyone that's done any digging as far as that. With professor knowledge, we did, and we do still have to have faculty, especially in phonemic awareness and phonics, that needs more training. So, like a lot of our current faculty were very strong in fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, writing, but they were missing, like K-12 teachers, that piece. And so we've had to get training as much as we could get. And then right now what I'm doing is, if the adjuncts I'm able to hire have completed our program, so I know that they've been trained correctly, I guess. So that's how I do it right now.
So Amy, we are at the top of the hour. I just wanted to make sure if there's any more questions for Amy. I think we do want to respect everyone's time.
I do want to say nice job.
Oh,
Very
thank you.
nice job presenting. It really was very good. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Amy, this is really very informative, and thank you for sharing your time and going over this with us. It was very eye-opening. It was a great job.
Yeah, there were so many components I loved that you offer there at UCA. Makes me want to go back, really. But I would love to come help out. Yeah.
So again, this was we did record this, and as Amy said earlier, we're going to get the copies of the overview. We'll place them on our Google Drive, which everyone should have access to, and then we will email out that link to everybody on here, as well as the others that weren't able to attend. Lisa, any other comments or questions?
No, I think we're planning to plan something in January, and do we want to just throw out those dates, or we'll just send them when we know for sure?
Let's define them and send them later.
Yeah. So we're looking at January for our next gathering.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you. Jennifer, stay on. And Tracy can stay on. I'm gonna stop